All right, so we're going to get this November 21st, 2024 regular open board meeting to, I'm sorry. All right, so we're going to get this meeting called to order. If we could, oops, sorry. I always forget the, oh yes, stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. All right, so we've got a extra special message that Christy's going to read.
All right. Forgive me if I have any mispronunciations on this, but the Maplewood Richmond High School District would like to acknowledge that we're living and learning on the traditional land of several indigenous peoples, both past and present. We honor with gratitude the land itself, the people of these indigenous communities, and the relationship that exists between the people and the land. We acknowledge the painful history of genocide and forced occupation of their territory. We respect the many diverse indigenous people connected to this land on which we gather. Tribes within the Maplewood and Richmond Heights footprint include Kickapoo, Kaskaskia, Osage, Maiamia, Ogopa, Akate, Sequim, these are recorded for the native land digital.
Oh, we also have a student speaker.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Enzo Galbonio. I'm a member of the POW board. So, Indigenous identity and culture is something that most of us don't typically think about in our day-to-day lives. Part of that has to do with the fact that most of us aren't Indigenous ourselves, but another part of that also has to do with the fact that most of us don't face the impacts most Indigenous communities face day to day. In the United States alone, Native Americans face issues related to environmental racism, poverty, poor health, and so much more. In regards to education in specific, most statistics show that Native Americans tend to never go after or even reach forms of higher education such as college. These disparities are a long-standing issue that we have to reflect on and realize are a byproduct of the oppression that Native tribes have faced ever since the founding of this country. Although I'm not related to any of the tribes present on the Maplewood or Richmond Heights land, I do have connections with Native culture in general. Essentially, all my extended family is from the country of Peru, which is located in South America. However, on my grandpa's side of the family is a laundry list of Native American ancestors. More specifically, these ancestors were referred to as the Andean people in reference to the fact that they lived in the Andes Mountains of South America. Like the Native Americans of North America, the Andean people were genocided and had their land taken away from them by European colonizers. I only recently learned of my ties to the Andean people a year ago, and since then, I've begun to research more about these peoples to better understand the culture that my mom and grandparents hail from. So, from the bottom of my heart, I'd like to thank the board for acknowledging the existence and various hardships of these communities, and I hope that we're able to work towards a world where these issues are no more. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now we're moving on to public forum. As 3 minutes or less, and not address any personal student or staff issues. Any public comments do we have? All right. Ms. LaRose.
Do I have to push something?
I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure out how to operate this. So I wanted to take a couple of minutes to just express my gratitude for the people in this room and district admin and building leadership. We have been a part of the MRH community since 2014, which is starting to sound like a long time ago. And my oldest entered 7th grade at the middle school this past fall, which is something that I've been having anxiety about for probably his whole life. And I just, it was sort of compounded by the fact that he has some learning disabilities that have made his school success is a little more challenging, and he has had an IEP since the 3rd grade. And we had our IEP meeting yesterday, and I left that meeting just filled with so much gratitude for everyone in this district because of the way that he is thriving in the middle school. I think Mr. Zitzer's here. I think the tone that he sets is just so wonderful, and the students feel it, and the families feel it, and Michaela Jackson is his SSD teacher, and she was so organized, and she just seems to understand how to give him the tools to succeed. And I just wanted you all to know that I was feeling that, and that I know that the job that you do is hard, and it's a lot of work, and that a lot of times you're dealing with things that are not going great, but there are things that are going really great, and so I just wanted you to all know that. So thank you for the work that you do.
All right, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda is presented.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Study items. This is number 3 on our list. Audit report by Ms. Cochran from KEB.
So this evening we have Brittany Wolfram. Gina's not able to be with us this evening, but Brittany was our senior audit manager, so she will be delivering the presentation this evening.
Ms. Wolfram.
Okay, so I am Brittany Wolfram. I was the manager on the audit this year. We gave 3 separate opinions related to this audit. The first opinion is over the financial statements. So regarding the financial statement audit, it was management's responsibility to prepare the financial statements in accordance with the modified cash basis of accounting, and then it was our job as the auditors to express a fair opinion on the fair presentation of the financial statements. We performed our audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards, government auditing standards, and uniform guidance, and we issued an unmodified or clean opinion regarding the financial statement audit, which is the best opinion you can have. Regarding our financial statement audit, we did test internal controls over financial reporting. So this is the controls over your cash receipts, your cash disbursements, your payroll, and your financial close process. We did not have any material weaknesses that we found related to those internal controls. We also noted no non-compliance with laws, regulations, contracts, or grants. The second opinion that we gave was related to the federal award audit. So the district spent over $750,000 in federal expenditures. We are required to test major programs to account for 40% of all federal expenditures. We selected the child nutrition program this year to obtain our coverage. Related to that program, we issued an unmodified or clean opinion, which again is the best opinion that the district can receive. Related to this audit, we tested internal controls over the child nutrition program, and we noted no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies, and we had no findings related to this audit. The third opinion that we gave is over state compliance. So we examined the district's compliance with Missouri laws and regulations. This includes budgetary and disbursement procedures, accurate attendance records, and accurate transportation records. We performed this examination in accordance with attestation standards established by the AICPA, and again, unmodified, clean opinion, so the best opinion that you can have. We are required to communicate a few things with you. So significant accounting policies are disclosed in Note A of the financial statements of the district. This states that the district reports on the modified cash basis of accounting. This is different than GAAP, so it's not full accrual, but it's consistent with most Missouri local school districts. The district did not have any new accounting policies or change their existing policies this year. We noted no transactions that lacked authoritative guidance or consensus. The financial statement disclosures are neutral, consistent, and clear. We had no difficulties in completing our audit and no disagreements with management. We complied with all relevant ethical requirements regarding independence. and we had no misstatements detected as a result of our audit, so there was no audit adjustments for the district this year. We are required to identify significant risk to you, so management override of controls was a risk that we identified. This is required to be identified in every single audit we do, whether you're a local mom and pop shop, a big Fortune 500, no matter what, as an auditor, we are required to identify this. This is just the risk that management can basically override the controls that are already in place and do whatever they want to commit fraud. So we did not know any issues during this. This is just a risk that we are required to have so that we can develop our audit procedures to catch something like that. There's no action necessary by management or the board. It'll just always be a risk going forward. We obtained a representation letter from management on November 8th, 2024. In that letter, they stated that financials are complete and accurate and all information was disclosed to us. And as far as we're aware, management did not consult with any independent accountants besides us. And then I just want to thank Chris and the rest of the district and the board. They helped us complete our audit and we got it done timely, a month early this year before the holidays, so we're very happy.
So I'd like to publicly thank my team, Audrey Hamilton, Joanne Kite, and Megan Nickmeyer. Everybody worked really hard. Audit time, everything else stops except for the audit, but they still have to do all of their other jobs, including payroll and all the disbursements. And also to Brittany and her team, it was a fantastic process this year, and they were a joy to work with, and we're all pleased with the outcome.
Any questions from anybody? Thank you.
Thanks, Brittany.
Thank you so much. On to presentation on board policy, excuse me, batch 2024C by Dr. Jameson.
Thank you. So the new policy batch that we have, 2024C, includes 9 policies. I'll give a short synopsis to reflect the changes that are made. This item is coming to the board as a first read and will come back for approval at the next board meeting. So policy EBC, lactation support, was modified as a result of the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. Changes in this particular policy includes accommodations being provided, and then also including with the accommodations the ability for staff to have accommodations if it's around pregnancy, childbirth, or medical conditions, and then the district is required to actually provide reasonable accommodations. Policy GBE, staff health and safety. Again, this policy supports policy EBBC, so there's some connection there. The Pregnant Workers Fairness Act is also a result of why this particular policy is being updated, as well as districts having 15 or more employees that need accommodations provided to. The changes in this.
I was going to say, if you're going through them one by one, can we ask questions in the middle? Or
Yep, just hop in. Yep.
Yeah, I have a question about GBE, so if you're still talking about that.
Yep.
Carry on.
Awesome, thank you. So in this particular policy, the district has the ability to make requests for medical records, but that is also supposed to be separate from any information that is maintained by the district and be held confidentially. It also looks at adding language where all employees receive annual training on universal precautions and communicable diseases, which we already do. An additional added language was related to any employee that's driving any form of MRH transportation has to annually provide the district with a statement from their medical physician. That concludes policy GBE. I welcome any questions.
Question was about if we're already doing that training. I know training time is precious, so glad to hear that we're not going to be trying to squeeze that in on top of other required trainings.
We currently actually offer training through Vector for communicable diseases. I would have to check into what the training looks like in regards to transportation and them annually providing a written statement.
Yeah, it looks like the training was already in there. They just moved it to a separate paragraph. So that's probably why we're already doing it.
Yep. All right, so policy GBDBA, support leave staff. And so this particular policy was modified for clarity purposes and also included some additional language. And it's specific to part-time employees. A few of the changes that are added: an employee must submit a written request for vacation to the superintendent or designee and have written authorization before that is approved. Other significant changes include the employee having additional leave or accommodations as a result of pregnancy, childbirth, or related medical conditions, and also includes our ability to provide the opportunity, if the employee seeks to do such, additional unpaid leave due to any accommodations that they have under the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act.
Can I just ask a question? I just don't know. Is an employee required to use their paid leave first?
For FMLA?
Yeah.
I believe they are
Okay.
required to exhaust their paid
Okay.
leave.
All right. Thank you.
The next policy, ILA, test integrity and security. This one was actually modified to reflect the Missouri Assessment Program. We already have a district testing coordinator. That language was included in this modification, and also indicates that we have to provide training on integrity and security for each. And Rachel Ward already conducts that, in addition to the investigations if improprieties are reported, and being willing to coordinate with DESE around that investigation. So these things are currently being done. They just made some changes in the language in regards to more specific things that are required under the Missouri Assessment Program. So policy JG, student discipline, I believe that this particular policy will have more of an impact at the building level. And this one is actually also aligned to the requirements in MSIP 6, and specifically to the word of nexus. So typically when we talk about nexus, it's from the schoolhouse door to the door of the child's home for disciplinary actions. And here with this change, now it gives school districts the ability to extend that. If it includes threats, bullying, and things of that nature, the district has an ability to actually discipline for those. And they also added language for conduct is also otherwise protected by law. So not a whole lot of changes, but just to reflect the changes that are required in MSIP 6. Policy GB1, part-time and substitute employees. This particular policy, due to teacher shortages, is addressing that need by decreasing the number of credit hours needed for individuals to actually sub in districts. So currently, we require 60 credit hours. The modification is 36 credit hours, or 20 additional hours of training online, which is offered through DESE.
Quick question about that one. It said it in the intro, like the law encourages but doesn't require districts to provide an orientation program for substitute teachers. I mean, we get most of ours through contract, right? Do they do some sort of orientation, or do we do?
They actually do training. Kelly Services provides
them?
training
Okay.
for them.
That's what I figured. All right.
Do we think that this change is going to, do we think Kelly Services is going to actually engage more substitutes, like given the reduced requirements? And I know we have the ability to put folks on a like preferred sub or prefer not to sub list for ourselves. Do you anticipate any limitations on folks with these limited credentials?
I would be more interested in the training that they actually provide them. I think 60 credit hours is some. Not really familiar what their training looks like. So that may be an opportunity for us to actually partner with Kelly. But I do think that we will see an increase. Particularly, you think about a person who may not have a degree, who completes the 20 hours of online training and now can actually step foot in the classroom to be a substitute teacher. So I don't personally think the 20 hours is enough, but we do have some districts currently that are carrying 80 subs for classroom teachers that are in need of subs. So I think they're trying to make modifications to meet the needs of those districts.
Yeah, I get that the Department of Ed has to keep in mind our rural colleagues and others.
All right. So policy GCBDA, professional staff short leave. Again, this one was modified to address part-time employees. They included language for employee may be required, and also outlining what applicable paid leave looks like. And this policy also allows short staff or employee to actually engage in the interactive process to determine appropriate accommodations, which was in language added in the previous policy. The next policy is IGBE, students in foster care. They added a timeline designation where they get 10 days to determine deadline for determining the best interest of the child's purpose, especially when the foster care is outside of the student's home district.
So before, there was no timeline, and I'm just curious, is it better for the child, this change, or better for the?
I would say it's better for the child. Depending on the school district, you can have people take longer than 10 days, which means that the child is not having access to.
Okay, so they just have to figure it out in 10 days. But if they don't, then they have to send them to the new place, it looks like, so maybe not. Is that what it's saying?
I would have to go back and
Okay.
look at it in detail, but I can.
Yeah, it says in which placement in the district in which the student was placed in foster care, so. Okay, who makes that determination?
As far as the,
Where to place them?
normally that's Mr. Estrada, and he partners with the other entity
So
to
if we have a
determine
kid in
that.
our district who's put into foster care, you would work to figure that out?
Yeah, I have to talk about that in 2 seconds. It's called a best interest determination process. It's relatively new and much needed.
Yeah.
Many years ago, when students were in foster care, every time they changed the foster placement, they had to change schools.
Yeah,
It was
okay.
terrible, honestly, it was terrible. Missouri was out in front of this, and they changed the law state to make sure that the kids had access to stay in their home school of origin if it was in their best interest. But then when the new federal law created this best interest determination process, where both districts come together with the children's division worker and the family
Okay.
to determine best interest.
Okay.
And the student has a chance to weigh in also.
Oh, good.
So it's a much better process. Where we were struggling, why the policy changed, is it was kind of a mushy timeline.
Okay,
It was hard to get the meetings. We were basically saying, hey, you gotta get this done in 10 days.
okay,
So it is better for the students.
okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
no problem.
And then the last policy I'm probably most excited about, which is JFCL A+ Scholarship Program. Now, a number of students in our district actually participate. So the modification for this particular policy is that students can use the funds that they would use for AP Scholarship to actually apply it to dual enrollment if they choose to do that. So from an access standpoint, I think it's beneficial for us, but it also ensures that they still can have access to A+ when they go post-secondary. So again, this is one when we talk about equity and our efforts, they also removed the qualification. We had a lot of students who didn't qualify for A+ if they had suspensions. So they've also removed that requirement as well. So you have to be suspended for more than 10 days versus how they actually looked at that. So for us, this is a benefit. We have a lot of students who participate in A+, and I think I'm excited to see what the outcomes will be for those students who take part.
I did note, it looks like it added, it says the district shall employ an A+ scholarship coordinator. Do we already have someone?
We do have
Okay,
someone
so
who
it's
does
not an
that.
additional, okay.
No.
Thank you.
Can you tell us who that is in case people have questions about?
I believe it's right. Oh, is it you? Oh, fun.
Thank you.
I was about to give that one to Rachel Ward. I was like, I think it's Rachel. She'll be glad that I didn't give her any new tasks.
Maybe for those who can't see on the camera who's waving is Ms. Hutton, the high school principal.
That concludes these policies, and they'll come back at the next board meeting.
All right, thank you. Moving on, the new course proposal, splitting creativity and technology by Dr. Chris McGee.
Yep, I'm going to invite Mr. Zitzer up to the mic to walk us through. I will do my best to navigate the slides when he looks at me to click the slide deck.
Yeah.
So this is a pretty simple proposal. We currently have a course called Creativity and Technology. After having it for a year plus, we're realizing that there's a little bit too much content in one semester, and with our students coming with limited computer skills and coding skills, the disparity in that class kind of keeps kids from being successful, and so we want to split it into two to make the content more manageable. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. So part of it is because it'll allow us, we want to re-envision our master schedule to provide more time in core content areas, and so that would likely result in a minimized time in elective courses. And so if we currently are struggling to meet all the content-specific needs in that course in the 80-minute block we have now, it's likely that we would struggle even more. And so being able to split this into two courses, there already is a clear divide in those classes. And so it would be pretty simple to just split the two major units into two separate courses. This also just allows Dr. Graham to have more courses within his kind of his repertoire. So right now he has two, technology, multimedia, and creativity and technology. And so theoretically a student could enter in 7th grade, take both of his courses, and then never access him again. And so this will allow us to kind of spread that out, allow students to go deeper, develop projects, and kind of expand their creativity within more of just a middle school mindset around those courses. And so we want to be able to maximize the instructional time in those classes and provide students who might be struggling more differentiation, more time, and then also students who are excelling, give them the time and space to push forward and be more creative within the projects they have. But if we can expand the smaller units into something where there's more depth, then we're able to kind of meet the needs of all the kids. And right now there's too much packed in and we're rushing through it. So I would like to split those into two. You can go to the next slide. These are the proposed units. So these already exist within the curriculum. It's a PLTW, Project Lead the Way curriculum. So it's already developed. It's already pretty, the scope and sequence is already there. And so we would just be taking the units within that computer science for innovators and makers, which are those 3 units. And then the next unit, the next class would be app creators, and there are 3 units within there. So we're not necessarily adding anything except providing some more time for projects and creativity within there. And then also some of the soft skills that Dr. Graham and I have talked about, some of the typing skills that kids need. It's a skill our students kind of lack. And so being able to fill some of those computer skills, like you need to be able to copy and paste pretty consistently in the coding program, and students have never learned those shortcuts. So to start the program out, he's teaching them all these shortcuts that the program assumes kids come with already. And so being able to split those up again to these 2 separate courses would allow more opportunities for kids to take tech classes within our school. I kind of went over the benefits already, but essentially my big thing is that I want all of our students to be able to take these classes and be successful, which means that they have the time and space to do that. And then we have some cool kids doing some really awesome projects with independent studies within there and extending, and that gives them more opportunity to do that as well with students who want to take things a little further. And so my recommendation is that we split that creativity and technology course into 2 separate courses, and the 2 names would be up there, and that's what we would put into the course guide. Questions?
Is this a required course? Or the 2 courses will be required?
No, so the way we'll begin to structure next year is we currently offer 23 elective opportunities at the middle school, which is a little too many right now. So we're going to offer a block for 7th grade of a shortened list of what they can take, and the computer science for innovative makers will be on that list. So they'll at least have the opportunity to take 1 tech course, and then in 8th grade they can choose to take the app creators or the tech multimedia course. But we're going to encourage as many of our kids to take those. This year they had to choose between one of the 2, and so we have a lot more kids within those courses, just to expose them and have an opportunity to see if that's something they're interested in. Yep.
Yeah, thank you. What does Dr. Graham teach in that 3rd spot now? So
He has a math lab currently, but I think within options we've looked at looking at our schedule, and then also determining which students should be or not be in math lab based on just their NWA scores, and kind of creating a market for where we currently have kids in there who probably shouldn't be in there. They're receiving supports that maybe we could pull back and push more into our core content areas. So he's teaching in math lab right now, but I don't foresee that need to be something he does in the future.
is that because like test scores in the 5th grade, 6th grade are higher, and you expect incoming middle school students to not need that resource?
Partly that, and also I think if we're trying to increase instructional minutes in the core content areas, we can push some of that differentiation for some of our students who are we have some students who are basic on the map in intervention when in getting 2 math classes, when in reality we should probably only have students who have been historically struggling below basic, multiple grade levels below. But because we don't have enough instructional time currently in those core areas, we've put them in a double dose of math. And if we can reinvent our kind of master schedule, we won't need those kids to be in those classes in that double dose setting. So,
Thank you.
So the equity lens here is not just this will benefit all middle school students, but that there's some specific attention towards meeting gaps for students who need additional math support. I'm also hearing that the splitting of this will facilitate both students who have limited computer skills to get more of the support they need, as well as maybe allowing students with some math or some computer advancement to have a chance to take that further.
yeah, I just think from a practical standpoint as a teacher, if it's condensed like this and you're trying to meet both those needs, it's very difficult. So if we can spread the content out a little bit, Dr. Graham has a much better chance of providing kids the opportunities to go in both directions where they need it.
Any other questions? All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Moving on, admin communications, program evaluations, alternative services by Ms. Foe.
So I'm super excited to have Ms. Foose to come and present her program evaluation. Just to give context, her program evaluation will look slightly different than the ones that are previously submitted as a means to give the board some additional context, because that was one of the ags around understanding what our Audit program contributes to the high school. I will say, since Ms. Foose has started to collect data, the alternative ed program has contributed greatly to the graduation rate at the high school. I will not steal her thunder because it's in her presentation, but we'll definitely allow her to do that. Ms. Foose?
Thank you. So I'm Melissa Foose. I'm the Alternative Programs Coordinator and an English teacher within the program. So I wanted to start by talking about that word alternative. Sometimes in other districts, when you hear alternative programs, you might think that this is a place where students who have problematic behaviors are sent away. That is not true here in our district. So alternative really to us means a different path, a different setting, a different approach to learning. So just kind of a different way. The picture with the green, this is in our new space. If you have not seen it yet, you should definitely come check it out. It's really pretty fabulous. It's our gathering area. So a little history. I think this is my 15th year here. And when I first started, I was an English teacher in that red brick building. That's our Student Success Center. And we kind of operated off campus across from the public library. It was very small. We had our classes in the bedrooms. And most, like 100% almost of the learning was done through online curriculum modules called Odyssey-ware. I think actually back in the day it was Play-Doh. There wasn't a lot of structure or programming at the time when I first started. And students were kind of just walked over at any point in the year if they were like failing or causing trouble. So the admin would just kind of walk them over and be like, "Here are your new kids." And so we've changed a lot from that. The house with the white siding was our Missouri Options program. And then we had a program called SAGE, which was in the basement of the high school. So currently, we have, this is like our little umbrella of alternative programs. We operate Tier 3 programming and Tier 2 programming. So Tier 3 programming is, it's designed for small groups of students who need a high level of support, and Tier 2 is more targeted intervention. So we support the middle school through some targeted interventions. We have a check-in, check-out program. We provide sometimes a safe space just when students are struggling with anxiety and need to come check in, do some self-regulation, and then go back to class. And then our Blue Devil Restore program serves both the high school and the middle school. This program is rooted in restorative practices and replaced the old model of in-school suspension. So it used to be like students were just assigned to be, kind of isolated from the rest of the community to serve out their time. And over the years, it's really turned into a place of teaching and learning. It's about reflecting. If there was harm caused, it's about reflecting on who was harmed, what the impact of that was, and how to repair that harm. So this work involves sometimes collaborating with other teachers, other students who've been impacted. So that serves both the middle school and the high school. Then we have the Missouri Options Program, and that is for students who are a year behind their cohort with credits. They have to be 17. They have to pass government, personal finance, and health, and have either 15 hours of volunteer, class time, or work experience. And then they have to take and pass the 5 high-set exams, used to be called the GED. Students still graduate with an MRH diploma. It'll say like high-set diploma, but it's still a diploma from MRH. Many districts have this program. And then we also have high school interventions, so for students who need a safe place to come, a check-in, check-out program. And then also our main kind of programming for high school students, which is the Tier 3, is the Student Success Center. And I'm gonna tell you a little bit more about how students are identified for that in a second. The staff is Carol Pelosi. She is a certified math teacher. Then there's me. I'm a certified English teacher. Bill Pott is a certified history teacher. Amy McAvoy is half-time in the middle school as an art teacher and half-time our Missouri Options teacher. And Whitney Lee and Travis Williams are interventionists that run the Blue Devil Restore program and support science and English teacher. Okay, next. So in alternative programs, we believe that all students have the ability and desire to learn when they have a safe environment to do so. And it's our responsibility to create a safe environment for students. It's the students' responsibility to help keep it that way. And when we talk about safety, that's emotional safety too. So I'd say about 10 years ago, the staff in alternative programs, and we have a very veteran staff, so all those pictures that you just saw, we were all still kind of the same team. We were feeling pretty burned out, and we were really struggling with a lot of student behavior, not necessarily like explosive or anything like that, but just maybe disengaged and kind of challenging. And our boss at the time, TKA, some of you remember him, introduced us to a book on conscious discipline. And this truly transformed our approach to students and our approach to looking at behavior. So this kind of just compares how traditional discipline is looked at versus how conscious discipline is looked at. So we really believe that controlling and changing ourselves is possible and has a profound impact on others. We believe that it's connectedness, not rules, that govern behavior, and that all conflict is a learning opportunity. The first kind of chapter in this study was on like adult composure, and we were really frustrated, like, wait a minute, we want to talk about how we get the kids in line. And what we realized is that when we do our own work and the work as adults, that we can change the entire vibe of the community and program. Okay, so the students we serve, we have really, truly bright and creative, wonderful students. Some common threads is that they haven't been successful in our traditional program, and that can be for a variety of different reasons. They usually need targeted academic support due to failures and credit deficiencies, could benefit from a smaller social academic setting to address anxiety or other stressors, benefit from increased social emotional supports, and this is a really important one, desire an alternative placement and are willing to commit to our program expectations. So like I said before, it used to be that, you know, admin could just walk students over at any point. They were kind of sent there. The way we have our program designed is that students have to choose to come. They have to want to come. And that really has directly related to our success with students because they have a sense of agency over their own learning, and it makes a big difference. And sometimes we have to, help them see that this is a great choice by looking at their credits and what a path would look like in the traditional setting versus in an alternative setting. But it's pretty powerful when they choose that and embrace kind of a second chance. So our process for identifying students, building admin and or counselors or their social workers identify possible referrals based on patterns of behavior. So sometimes that's low attendance, students who are just feeling overwhelmed and shut down, disengaged in class, struggling to pass classes, vocalizing like displeasure about coming to school. So then we have counselors check in with teachers, students, and parents to gather more data and update our trackers. So we keep a lot of data about the students that we're discussing. Then we have monthly meetings that are scheduled to review the data and to determine the next best steps. Sometimes it's like we problem solve a different intervention to try. And sometimes we say, yeah, this looks like a student who maybe should come our way. And then I reach out to the families and set up meetings to kind of do an interview, tour the space, determine the classes that might be needed, and gather any additional information. We always have students join us at quarter so that they can truly have a fresh start in approaching their learning. So our program is designed to build connection. We really believe in that quote in the pink that no significant learning occurs without significant relationship. And so we do very intentional relationship building in our program. We have morning meetings. We have students kind of do check-ins with themselves to figure out what kind of emotional state they come into our space. We do brain smart starts, which sounds like something you would do with little kids, but we have our teenagers doing it, where we actually stand in a circle and we all get physically connected to build that connection, and we do a lot of team building. Our program is also designed to encourage curiosity and exploration. So we noticed a couple years ago that while we were able to get most of our students to graduation, once they got through that milestone, they didn't really know what they wanted to do next because they were so focused on that, graduation, getting those 24 credits. And so we really wanted to start looking at how can we expose our students to other experiences and opportunities so they can start seeing themselves out in the world and in our community. So we've been taking students off campus a lot. We've worked with some partnerships with companies in tech and studied the Boeing program and gone out into the woods and done hikes. And also really encouraging our students to explore and do passion projects driven by their interests and curiosities. And that's been really, really, really fun to see. So as Dr. Jameson was saying, we have an impact on the graduation rate. So in 2022, 13% of the senior class graduated through alternative programs. In 23 and 24, 18%. And then, I could stand up here for hours and hours telling you all the anecdotal data about how alternative programs impact students, just in the way that they learn about themselves and their confidence grows, and they see themselves as learners and as contributing to the community. And I could also have a lot of slides with all their quotes. So at the end of the year, we have our seniors stand up and they kind of tell their story. And these are just a couple quotes. So one student said, "I'm so lucky to have gotten the opportunity to be a part of the SSC. It has helped me so much. It has made me more motivated to get work done and to keep fair grades. Being a part of this program is something I'm extremely thankful for. If it wasn't for this, I probably would have tried to drop out of high school. I would recommend this program because it's like a family. School in the SSC is still definitely work, and it's certainly not always fun, but now I feel safe and comfortable enough at school to actually do the work. I think if I hadn't gotten into alternative programs, it's very likely I would have ended up dropping out. I was given an opportunity to be in this program which changed my life. My grades improved, and I was more engaged than I've ever been. I didn't want to be a dropout anymore. And so you hear that word dropout in all of those quotes, and really, truly, all of our students who come our way have thought about that in some capacity, about no longer wanting to be a student. Okay, questions?
How many students are in the program right now? And is it pretty consistent, like the number that stays roughly like?
Yeah, so we used to be really bound by space because we physically couldn't fit anyone else in the houses. So this is our first full year in the new space. We're currently serving 21 students, and we just talked about 10 students at our last meeting. I'm not saying all of those are going to start right away, but so it'll be interesting to see. We don't have the space cutoff anymore. However, we do want to be mindful about percentages and what percentage of your population do you want in a tier 3 program. So it's kind of a rolling number. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the 21 students are in the tier 3?
Yes.
Yeah. How many additional are being served by tier 2?
That's a great question. I can tell you that in 23-24, we had 246 BDR referrals, so that's through our restorative program. And in 22-23, there were 245 BDR referrals, only one difference. Currently, I'd say we have about 5 or 6 students who are either doing a check-in, check-out, or coming to our space as a safe space. And again, that number is always kind of in flux.
I have another couple questions.
Uh-huh.
Can you explain more about Blue Devil Restore and how that differs from middle school and high school interventions?
So Blue Devil Restore is kind of that replacement model from the old way of thinking of in-school suspension. So it can be used with discipline. So if an incident happens and the student needs to be removed from the classroom or the community, then there's more of reflection on the harm that was caused and how to repair that harm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And one other question. The Missouri options, so the 21 students, are they split between the SSC and the Missouri options, or is that all in the SSC?
Yes. Yeah, that's
Okay.
split between. Uh-huh.
And so these students are only essentially seniors, is that right? Because they
Yes.
have to have those other courses.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
I'll just add that one of my family friends is a regular sub in the alternative programs and has led a number of workshops there with your students and sings the praises of the alternative programs, thinks y'all are doing, watching what y'all do on the inside, they report that it's incredible what you guys are doing, and they speak highly of the program.
Thank you for that feedback.
Any other questions? All right, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we have program evaluation, early childhood preschool by Ms. Stansel.
Good evening, everyone. I can't start talking without giving a shout out to ECC staff that are here and parents. So thank you for being here. Welcome. We actually have Home Space 1 here in the building. So I'm here to talk about our preschool evaluation, and we'll just start with the next slide. And I'm Tanisha Stansel, ECC principal. So our goal that we had last year was just ensuring that preschool students entering kindergarten would be kindergarten ready. We did meet that goal, but I will explain how that was chosen. So according to the MSIP-6, it's not actually, are they academic ready? It's, did we actually administer the test to the students? And in order to gain your points, you have to have assessed 95% of your students. So we did that. So yes, that could be difficult to understand, but the next slides we will get into how we are working to increase our actual kindergarten achievement scores. So these next two slides, one is just, they're both just saying, are they ready or are they not ready? And the two that I wanted to show was our demographics of our students. So that's what the first graph is. And our second graph is, are they students that were already in our preschool, or were they students who were just new to MRH in general? And so some of the things that, of course, as you can tell, there are still some concerns. because blue means you're not ready, and we see quite a bit of blue up there, even though it was only 98 students. But over the course of our years, our license holds 155 students, and when we do spot shares and things of that nature, or are providing services through special education, we could have a few more students depending on what those services look like. So we absolutely still have work to do. And so I'll move to the next slide to talk about first what our strengths are, and then we'll move into the things that we're doing to help our students achieve. I'm always going to say that our staff at the ECC have so much experience and are always eager to learn more. We have nationally board certified teachers. We have teachers who are going through their foundations training to be able to teach literacy. We also are a part of the math pilot. We have 2 teachers piloting that along with our K through 2 teachers. We have reestablished our professional learning community, which historically has not been something that this group in preschool has been able to do. But now that we have a solid master schedule, they can meet regularly to then talk as a team, and then we talk about standards or early learning standards and what are the high priority standards to move kids to kindergarten ready. We also have established a pre-K and MTSS team. So this was a copy from the last one. We used our setup and system for K through 2 and moved it down to pre-K. So that includes their special education teachers, their counselor, their interventionist, and we work together with admin and counselors to work together to try to keep students from being referred to special education for YCDD if we can help them ahead of time. We also created a parent engagement team that started with our pre-K, so that what was born out of that was our kindergarten transition fair. That was a really great hit last spring, and we will do it again, but we are also meeting to create more programs for more families. And because we do have more combined families, meaning we have families that have students on both sides of the school, how can we extend that parent engagement across the school because we have so many families? We also have created readiness groups. So a part of the intervention is we're trying to create fluid groups for our literacy, social skills, and our emergent bilinguals, because we don't necessarily have ELL services in preschool, but now students have access to a readiness group. And that teacher has went through a week of emergent bilingual training of helping support teachers to immerse students at that age into the environment so they can begin learning the language and literacy culture. We've also introduced second steps. That task is being picked up by our teaching assistants, which is a big lift for them, but I'm very happy that they're willing to do it, and they're doing it with the support of the counselor as well as administration and their lead teachers, so that students are constantly getting social emotional learning throughout the week, and that's already a program that's being done on the K through 2 side. And last but not least, we are also including our special education students that are in one of the home spaces. One of the problems is students were in that space, and then they get to kindergarten and they're struggling because now they're like opened up to a whole new world. So I want to give a shout out to Miss Brenda and Home Space 7 and her team for working with the teachers, and the teachers collaborating, and they're finding the best time for those students to be a part of those other home spaces, whether it's circle time, going outside. Now they're building their relationships with their peers and seeing more, so when they do go to kindergarten, they're more prepared with their peers. Some of our growths, because our theme is Ready, Set, Grow this year, are strengthening our PLC process. So we've determined in looking at the KOF, what are 3 standards that they want to see and improve on as a group. And we picked one from approaches to learning, cognition and general knowledge, and discriminating some sounds in words. So those are the 3, even though they're tracking all of the instruction based on what we did as a group, those are the 3 that they really need to focus on, and we'll continue to make sure they bring that up in their instruction and work with students. Administration, we're just doing fidelity checks in instruction. Are we seeing second steps happen? Are we seeing them use Haggerty and foundations? If they're receiving the professional development, are we helping students grow in that area? We're providing opportunities for teachers to learn from each other through the day, whether it's a TA learning from another TA, or a teacher having that bonding time to be able to collaborate and talk about what your projects are and what your work is. So we're going to keep working through that. And of course, increasing opportunities for parent engagement. This is especially important for our federal programs because there are requirements that come along with that. But we are doing a better job at even monitoring the attendance of our preschoolers so parents can understand that attendance starts here, because if they don't have good attendance in preschool, they're bringing that behavior over to the K-2 side, and it's affecting our overall attendance for that side, which is another point that we give to our district. So we're kind of starting that at this level, but still working through families understanding that preschool attendance is just as important as K-2 attendance. So our goals, in an effort to make one school versus two, these goals are the same as our K-2 teachers, so effective communication with leadership. This was based on the survey given out at the NEA, from the NEA, and we want to raise that from 76.7 to 85%. The MTSS process, because we do have an MTSS team for pre-K, so 80% of students who enter the process will successfully exit intervention versus being referred to special education. And we have our Metaphor goal because we are a Reggio Emilia inspired school, so 100% of teachers will complete a Reggio inspired project by May of 2025, separate from self-portraits, but our preschool teachers are very well versed in Reggio, so they are also working and starting to work with the pedagogista to also support our K-2 teachers so they can learn. Our pedagogista was also a K-2 teacher, so she's able to help teachers understand how you can uncover and teach standards within project work. So that's we're very grateful to have Ms. Heather Bailey in that regard, and to have that lens on the K-2 side to bring that to the preschool side so we can actually make sure kids are being ready to learn. And this was the last slide, so an item forthcoming to discuss is with the recent increase in early childhood education funding, how can we utilize that funding to align with our MSIP 6 standards, and how can we increase programming, readiness, access, and equity to give more students access to our preschool. And if they come, we want to make sure they're prepared for kindergarten. Any questions?
Okay, yeah, I've got a few questions. Back on your chart on page 3, slide 3, so with the about 30 students not ready, what have you correlated that with in terms of what's happening for them in the building? Are they a particular class, or is it a curriculum issue? What's correlated with the not ready versus the ready, do you think?
So the way when you look at the data as a whole, it tells you every single area and where the weaknesses lie as a whole. And so those 3 areas that I mentioned, approaches to learning, cognition and general knowledge, and sounds and words, are the highest leverage actions that would help students be ready. I can tell you on the kindergarten side, students do come in knowing all their letters, but they really struggle with their sounds. And if you don't know your letters and sounds, now you're already behind to be able to read. So that's where those 3 goals come from, to help those students. So really, I would say adding the social emotional part was a missing. Not that people weren't doing social emotional skills, but now we're doing it collectively, so we know exactly what everybody's doing. I will be honest, me coming in, it did look like every home space was like a different school. And everybody shares ideas, but how can we do it collectively to make sure that the teaching is equitable across all home spaces? And I shouldn't have to tell a parent, you know, you got to go to this home space because this teacher's better than this teacher. How can we as admin support that teacher so that they are just as good as anyone else in the building? And I can successfully say to any parent, it doesn't matter what classroom you go to, your child is going to be ready for kindergarten.
Since I've only been on the board this year, is this data, has it been collected before, and how does it correlate with previous years?
So we did meet, well, we've met giving the assessment every single year that we've had to. So we've assessed it. I can get you that information if you'd like it for what it looked like in years past. I just personally did not have it for this presentation.
Yeah, it would be great if maybe you could send it through the superintendent to us. The other question I have is, was it the students who are not ready, what do we do with them? Do they still go on to kindergarten, I presume? Are they grouped into a common class together, so they're getting maybe some extra intervention, or are they distributed just as they currently are among all the different kindergarten classes?
So at the end of, in the springtime, what we do is we allow the teachers to work together on utilizing all the data of the students, whether it's their social emotional data, their academic data, do they have extensive needs, and they actually create the class list. One, to keep it balanced for the teacher that they're going to, but also we also collaborate to know what is coming to kindergarten. So if support is needed right away, then we can get that support. If they're coming over because they've been identified for YCDD, which is young child with a developmental delay, then we work on that. So there are some transition meetings that happen with teachers, but other than that, I leave that in the teachers' hands because they're most knowledgeable about those students and they create those class lists. And then the MTSS team provides support, or the SSD team provides support where necessary.
Thank you very much.
A question, so please excuse my ignorance, but you mentioned a recent increase in early childhood education funding. Where is that coming from?
We got a communication about that last summer,
Okay.
but that's going to require a different conversation forthcoming with more people than just me standing up here.
No, I'm just wondering what the source is.
Yes.
Like, I don't know where.
DESE sent out a communication that there was an increase.
DESE is going to get
Yes,
more money.
yes.
So they increased it from 4% to 8%, and we also can claim funding for students who qualify. And so I actually was talking to Stephanie Bouchard about that, so it would be benefit for us as a district.
Okay.
Or students with ADA.
Okay.
We claim them, and the district receives attendance or money back for their attendance.
And then I just wanted to say I love your goals. I think I probably said the same thing when we saw them for ECC, but I really love the specificity because it shows that you guys really looked at the data, have targeted like a certain increase you're trying to accomplish, and I think that's helpful for us, and I just appreciate that. So thank you.
Welcome.
Can you give me some examples of what the parent
Well, last year was our first time creating the team, and so we did some guardian guidance series where we had a therapist come in and just talk about like parenting preschoolers. How do we help them set boundaries? We also had the kindergarten transition fair that was well attended, so it was meant for preschool parents to have a chance to see the life of a kindergartner. A couple of Ms. Martinez came to that and was able to see that with us. Ms. Kaufman came. So it just allows students to come in, and we had some community partnerships come in, the library, youth sports, somebody to tie shoes, nutrition, just different things meant to give resources to parents for preschoolers. We had our kindergarten teachers there, so they were able to talk about what does it mean to be a kindergartner. And so those were our two biggest events we had, but we would like to do more because we do have some requirements for our federal programs, but not just because of that, but we do have families that disengage, and they seem to be our Black and brown families. And so we're going to be partnering with Artists First and trying to work with our Black and brown families, still doing more work with the counselors on the counselor side to bring support to parents as they need it. Part of our parent engagement team does hold people who can work with families to kind of build relationship and figure out why they're disengaged and why they're disconnected, because if they're disconnected, then they're not attending events, they're not engaging with the teacher, and ultimately, I would like to say that all of our students who are on our federal programs are also attending school at the same rate as the rest of their peers. So we just have to think outside the box and find ways, even if that means going to them and not always expecting everybody to come to the school.
So are the parents that are disengaged identified, and then you do some sort of special outreach to those?
Yes, but we still want to do engagement for all families. So for example, we're gonna do our first studio night in the spring, and that's meant for everyone. So there's things for everyone to be engaged in. You all know our biggest of kindness march, our farmers market. We're gonna add studio night, but we wanna scale it down and do some targeted engagement for those families to find out what we need to do to help them be engaged, because even if they're working a bunch of hours, we still want them to know that we care about them and their children. So what do you need from us, and what barriers could we possibly remove so that your child is here every day, they're ready to learn, they're sleeping, they're eating properly, and we're just making progress towards the kindergarten readiness goals.
But the parents are paying a fee to have their kids there, right?
Unless they're in a federal program.
Oh, okay. I see.
Yes.
And the attendance problem is largely there, or did I hear you say the attendance issues are related to families that have kids on both sides?
It can be both sides. I can tell you right now, like, illness is plaguing the ECC like no other.
Sure.
You know, like, and you know, we play with all the same supplies. We're trying to wash them. We're trying to keep them sanitized. But in the end, like, they just want to hug on each other, and they want to hold each other's hand. They want to share Play-Doh. They want to share blocks. But for the most part, it is illness that's really plaguing the attendance for preschool, this is the first year we're actually letting parents know what their attendance looks like. But the rest of it can be both sides.
Thank you.
I would love for y'all to continue to think about the number of students that show up new to kindergarten. This number looks about how it's looked, that there's always about 20 to 30 kids who just appear as 5-year-olds in kindergarten, and that we would obviously love to have as many kiddos in the preschool program as possible. You know, I'm not going to put you on the spot and ask you for engagement ideas there, but I hope it is something that maybe the parent engagement committee and the staff can think about. How do we continue to encourage families to send their kids to the preschool if preschool isn't necessarily something on their radar, and you know, are there places for advertising or recruitment that we haven't yet explored?
Thank you. Anything else?
All right, thank you so
I
much.
appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Right. Next we have school enrollment data by Estrada.
Hello, everybody. Vince Estrada, Director of Student Services for Maplewood Richmond High School District. I'm here for my annual school enrollment analysis presentation. And even though I'm not really a math nerd and don't love Excel spreadsheets, I do love looking at these numbers because they sort of mirror and tell the story of this district and this journey over the many years. Because the numbers do tell a story. But I always like to unpack these things. It always begs more questions, but I'll share with you some kind of things we learned by looking at this year's numbers. We moved this report. It used to be in October because the membership count was in September, but we wanted the extra month to make sure that the information was accurate because it actually goes into the October report for core data. A couple of terms that are kind of get conflated a little bit. So these are the enrollment numbers. These are like number of kids that walk into our spaces. Membership count is a little different. Membership takes into account part-time student basis, and that kind of is where we get some state funding formula. Chris and I talked about it earlier today. So our membership data accounts for our part-time students at South County Tech, part-time enrolled seniors, that kind of thing. But I'm going to talk about the enrollment numbers on this presentation. Here's the enrollment trends over I always like to go back longitudinally and remind us that we had a really low enrollment district-wide in the early 2000s. I was here then, yes. I was here for many years then. I specifically remember 2005 that our district enrollment dipped to its lowest time in history at 950. And we're now at 1381. And I can tell you that the reason why the enrollment has gone up steadily over those many years and stayed pretty high is because students and families intentionally come here and stay. Prior to that time, they were not staying. They were here for shorter periods of time. And we had to kind of do a deep dive into that because the reality was there wasn't a lot of, no one was selling a 40-acre farm and building a new subdivision in Maplewood, Richmond Heights. This is an old suburban community, and the housing stock has largely remained unchanged. But that's really accounted for a pretty steady increase and a high number. But you can sort of tell we hit a high water mark right before COVID at 1441, if you look at those numbers. And then post-COVID, I think as people experienced homeschooling as an option and online platforms, we did see a little bit of a decrease in overall enrollment. But compared to last year, we're down 15. That's a bit of an anomaly because So it's 1381 is our official enrollment count on the last Wednesday of September. But our enrollment count today is 1396, which is exactly how it was last year. So we enrolled like 15 people the next 2 weeks after our enrollment count date. So it does fluctuate a little bit. We look at grade level analysis. Is this like compares last year's kindergarten, for example, to this year's kindergarten? So this kind of shows some trends, and you show the decrease in 15. There's some big cohorts. If you're a third grader, Katie Kaufman's a parent of a third grader, that is a large group of kiddos. 120, I think it's our biggest group. But we have been steadily in and around the 100 for many years in most of our cohorts. The kindergarten group's a little bit smaller than we've had in the past, so 97 is a little bit smaller than we've had in years past. So that kind of gives you sort of a grade level analysis. What I find kind of interesting is our cohort analysis, compared to the group of kindergartens to the first grade. So there you see that change. And a net negative change of -10 is not a huge number. It's less than one kid per grade in terms of losing students from particular cohorts. The biggest changes are in the 9th grade and 7th grade, so those are some transitional years for us. But nothing drastically, that's a pretty consistent pattern for us. I think last year was a -8, this year's a -10. So they're pretty typical negligible numbers. Where are students transferring to? Kind of a nice variety of folks. The vast majority, almost half, go to other St. Louis County districts. We do have students going to choosing private schools, so you kind of see that information there. Neighboring counties refers to St. Charles County, Jefferson County, Franklin County. We do have some kids going to homeschool. We had a lot of kids going to homeschool about 3 years ago. They just stayed because they sort of liked that option coming out of COVID. So it kind of gives you a sense of where students are transferring to. And where they're transferring from. This was an unusual number for me, and I'm going to start tracking this. This is only the second year we've tracked the data with this depth. So St. Louis City, I'm like, oh my gosh, we had a lot of kids come from St. Louis City this year. I'm not sure why. Last year we had 11, this year we have 27. Last year we had about 12% of our transfers come from St. Louis City. This year it's almost 30%. So that's like a number that I'd share with Dr. Jake. I'm not sure because St. Louis City did have some challenges this year with transportation and some things, but that was a number that kind of jumped out at me and just something for us to track over time. And so this kind of is a smattering of St. Louis County transfers. We have 22 districts in St. Louis County. We had kids transferring to about 12 of those. And then a fewer numbers coming from in. So we had about 8 districts that kids came from St. Louis County. As you can see the numbers there. And private school is something we get asked a lot about. Kind of a regular kind of smattering, but the 9th grade is where we had the most kids. Now, this is how I look at it. So St. Louis is a high school shopping town. Where'd you go to high school is a thing here, right? I think there's a strong tradition. There's a lot of Catholic and private parochial schools in St. Louis, more than most other cities, I think, in terms of by proportion. And there's a lot of family history and reasons why people choose private parochial. But what I would say, I think that's the reality of it, and I think some of the private parochial schools offer some different kind of programming in terms of extracurricular and athletics that people may choose. It's a different kind of menu to choose from. What I think about is I kind of like the fact that a lot of families choose to prepare their kids here for private parochial schools. So they might have a tradition of sending their students to St. Louis U High, but they feel confident that this school district can prepare their kids for St. Louis U High. So I feel like that's okay in some of those cases. So, but it's a trend that we do track. So most of our kids that do transfer to private do it in 9th grade. And that's it. Any questions?
Thank you very much.
I have a question.
Oh, you have a question?
Yeah. So you mentioned these are head count numbers, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Just a rough estimate, FTEs, what would be like a percentage?
Actually, we just looked at that. So we're at 1381. I think when Chris and I looked at it today, it was like 1366.
Okay, so
Yeah.
pretty close.
Pretty close, yeah.
Not too many.
And really, it's mostly, it's really the students that go to South Carolina Tech because they count as a 0.5. And then we have a few seniors that have part-time schedules. But for the most part, they're almost all full-time kiddos. Yeah. And the membership is really determines ADA and some of the funding from the state. The thing about the enrollment numbers is that's what goes historically. Like in perpetuity, if you look at the numbers for MRH in 24-25, 20 years from now, it'll say 1381. So when you go into the database. But the membership really drives the funding a little bit.
Okay, so sorry, you said the South County Tech kids count as 0.5. So revenue from the state with South County?
That's how that works, yes.
Okay, so we're not making a payment to South County
Correct.
Tech for those students?
That's
Okay,
right,
They're,
yes.
they're separately getting
Yeah, they take their own attendance and report those, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and South Carolina Tech is managed by the Special School District of St. Louis County. Right.
It's actually also part of our partnership agreement.
Yeah.
So we do pay for services that are provided, which includes South County Tech. So we do pay, but it includes other services
Yeah.
and supports that we receive.
Yeah, the iteration at South County Tech is, I mean, if you talk to alums from MRH, they used to have a lot of technical education here, but it's just difficult to sustain it in terms of certification and equipment and expertise. And so really having a consolidated tech school really allows the students to really have a really robust kind of state-of-the-art experience in terms of the technical education. It is outstanding. They do a good job.
I do want to add that I'm super excited about a shift that is occurring for South County Tech that actually resulted from advocacy from MRH, from one of our parents who was trying to get their child into the system, and there were inequities in the process. So they were looking at the behavior of students, the attendance, credit acquisition, and for students who need it most, particularly when you think about an alternative approach to learning, those students weren't gaining access. So now those prerequisites will be removed, and we'll have students who really enjoy actually hands-on learning. So I'm excited to see what opportunities exist for our learners in MRH.
Thank you. You're welcome.
All right, next we have our program evaluation of technology by Dr. Abby Orr.
Am I connecting? Nope. It's all me, huh? Look at me in technology, and I'm butts in the technology a little bit. Good evening, board, district administration, members of the community, and both here in the room and on the Zoom. I'm here to talk to you about our technology program evaluation for the last school year, what our goals were, what we did to accomplish those goals, and if we did not meet them, how we're in progress to meet them, and then what we are looking to do in the coming year to improve our practices here and make things better for students and staff. So last year we focused on 3 main goals for the department, me and my band of merry men. We looked at cybersecurity and data privacy as one of the items that we wanted to focus on. That primarily came from the state and the Missouri Insurance Group Music. Looking at cybersecurity, what they called controls. So areas that every district needed to have some sort of procedure or mechanism in place to keep data privacy secure. So we looked at improving some areas with that and looking at making sure that we had all of those things in place and what we could do to strengthen what we had going on here, as well as adding extra layers of protection for students and staff. We did meet that. We were able to meet that through adding some programs like ClassWise, which we use to and filter student activity, and looking at monitoring student health and safety. For example, something that we use through that is kind of keeping an eye on common language that might come through in communications so that we can check on students. Sometimes it's just them venting, but if there's something that comes through that we need to be aware of, we're able to communicate that to supports in the building, as well as having the things in place to where we can filter certain sites or give teachers the tools to do some of that on their own while keeping a district umbrella to keep the rest of us safe and keep our data safe. We also were able to accomplish that through having MoreNet, which is a state conglomerate that works, or consortium rather, that works to do things with technology in other districts and offer services, and they came in and did an audit for us to look at our network and our cybersecurity practices. We did very well with that. We got 48 points, which was in the very good range, and so there's one area that I will talk about on my next slide with goals for next year that we'd like to focus on just to make that part better. But for the most part, we are actually in a very good place in terms of our cybersecurity practices and our safety with data and data governance.
Another goal that we worked on this past year is to improve financial and operational efficiency. So technology is not, in some ways it's getting cheaper, but in other ways it's not. And some of the programs that we subscribe to, whether it's for classroom use or a curriculum resource or something to supplement, or just for day-to-day operations, maybe with the business department or with HR, those program subscriptions, they tend to go up a little bit as year to year goes on. And so part of our budget is to maintain what we have in terms of software plus hardware. And so what we did was we wanted to look at, were there some areas where we might be able to consolidate those items or change the particular needs we have with that, or how we're using those programs, in an effort to save money, but also to streamline practices so that maybe we didn't have different programs that weren't necessarily talking to one another. We can have it all under one platform. That's something else that we've been doing with the curriculum department. We've been doing that with operations, working a lot with other departments, as well as a teacher group that meets with me quarterly to discuss what needs are in terms of the classroom, as well as discuss with the various heads of departments and administration, and then try to get a snapshot of what we need to do moving forward in order to make sure that our software subscriptions are useful and we have what we need, but we're not having too many of them, if that makes any sense. Our last, and we did meet that goal, we were able to take some of the things that we were spending in terms of maybe supplements for curriculum or things that teachers were using in the classroom, or even just for our data security and what I discussed earlier that teachers use to monitor classroom, bundling some of those under one platform so that we could talk to one person if we needed support outside of the district, but by doing that, saving some money at the same time. So working smarter, not harder, and connecting some of those. In some cases, what was difficult was getting help because we might have had to go to this vendor for this. And so putting that all in one place to make things easier for us, but also easier for classroom teachers. Something that we did launch this year that was different was ClassWise, or not ClassWise, ClassLink, excuse me. That's our single sign-on program that we have that makes it easier for students to access the resources we have and log in, as well as teachers having it all in one central place. That was something that we listened to that teachers said, we have a lot of resources at our hands, but we don't always know where to find them. So what do we do? So that was one place that we could put that and give them the opportunity to find all those things, as well as make sure that it's all being rostered automatically so that we don't necessarily have to worry about taking time away from teachers and students having access to things because we may or may not have to connect with this program or that program. Our last goal that we focused on for this year was to look at optimizing how we support the district students and staff and looking at adopting a platform that would align with our strategic plan for our resources, which was to find a platform or find some sort of mechanism to monitor and streamline and put our assets in one central location. So Dr. Dietrich and I worked together a lot to adopt a program called Master Library, and we're using that for our work order system as well as to collect analytics on how we can operate more efficiently, but also to put all of our assets in one central location so that we can see what we have, when it was purchased, and start to develop plans and timelines for refresh cycles or buying new items or when we might need to surplus them. We were keeping this data before, it was just in different places, and so this keeps it all in one area that everyone who needs to access it can access it, but we can also service requests and work orders and anything that teachers and staff need. The reason why I put not met on that is because we're still in progress with that. So As of now, we have our student devices categorized in there. Excuse me, my mouth's a little dry. But we also are working on getting our other assets in there, as well as assets from other departments. So not just technology, but even inventorying and recording furniture or other items that we are purchasing, so that we have a predictable refresh cycle for that. So next year, we're going to focus as a department on improving specifically the areas of our cybersecurity audit that we need some growth opportunity in. So as I said before, in that audit, we did very well as a district. One area that our score was a bit lower was on data protection and how that is recorded, meaning what is the data flow, where it comes from, maybe at Power School, and who has access to it, and how it gets from point A to point B. So we're going to make sure that we spend this time coming up next year making sure that we codify that and put that down, as well as having accessible procedures for that. Those are things that we're doing. It's just something that we can do better, is have that readily available, as well as developing standard operating procedures for how we protect data and how we map data. The next thing that we are going to be focusing on is making sure that our ticket response time goes from about 3.8 days is what our average response time is from a ticket being submitted to close, down to 2.5 days. So overall, with this new system, we have almost 1,500 work orders in technology to date from the beginning of the year to this week, and 2.5 days is pretty quick, I think. So we're going to make sure that we spend more time focusing and looking at the data that we're collecting in there in order to improve our practices and maybe target areas that we can increase the response time or maybe shift focus. And then last but not least, something that we're going to be doing is making sure that we add more of our assets to this inventory management system, master library. I did a 15% increase. I think we can more than meet that, but adding our staff devices as well as classroom hardware so that we can begin to make those predictable refresh cycles. Any questions?
I just had a quick one.
Mm-hmm.
When you're talking about a work order, I mean, does that include everything from a kid can't log in to a device is broken? It's just really anything related to technology?
Yes, correct. So this work order system is not only for technology, it's for operations as well. And students, staff can put in work orders, but we also have a link for parents, and thank you, my mouth is a bit dry. It's warm in here. Oh, that's much better. Thank you so much. So, yes, we also have the opportunity for students to put in work orders. Okay. We made a link where it's accessible for students and families. So it could be anything from, I'm locked out of Power School. How do I reset my password? Or can somebody help me with some training or integration, or anything from this computer's not connecting to the Wi-Fi, is there something that we can do for that? We also have that running through our tech desk, which is in the high school, and I'm very proud to say that this is the first year. We have a student intern through Mr. Saucel's program, a 10th grader who's doing repairs during that time. Yes, it's very neat. So he's also he has a avenue to that system and access to that with with the appropriate permissions, and he's been helping kind of do some of our repairs, plus learn how we kind of delegate those things. But if they need help with Canvas, if they need help finding out whether or not an application that they might want to use for a subject is FERPA and COPA compliant, which for data privacy, they can put in a ticket for anything.
So is this average just technology, or it's the average for all work orders?
This is just for technology.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I have a question. We've a couple months ago we approved the purchase of for $12,000 per building of line-wise school manager. Can you say more about what that does?
Sure. So line-wise it's really 3 programs in one. That includes data privacy. So everything from making sure that certain things are blocked or filtered from getting into students and staff, including giving teachers the opportunity to kind of say, within this, I would like these sites to be available to my students during this time, or these sites not to be available during this time, as well as our web filtering. It also includes that monitor piece that I was discussing earlier. So we don't necessarily get a message every time someone might write something, they might be working on a paper in a class, and it definitely uses both an algorithm and the human element. They do have people there that monitor. So if something comes through where somebody might be writing something about their own safety or the safety of others, we can mitigate with that. And then the class-wise piece gives the teachers the opportunity to, during class, be able to remotely monitor what's going on the student's device, which is helpful. But also the nice piece too is that if there's something that they want to share with the class and get everyone on the same page, because sometimes it does take time, it allows them to kind of drive a little bit, if you will. I was a first grade teacher once, and one thing that was difficult was getting kids on the same website at the same time. And so something that you can do with the class-wise is that component of line-wise is push a site out to everyone's device at the same time. So it just kind of helps with the flow of teaching and classroom management. But those are all things that have to be in place as a part of the MSIP and music controls, is having the data filtering and making sure that we're keeping track of what comes in and what doesn't, what we don't allow to come in. But then we listened to the teachers and said, what things are missing from that component that you manage in your classroom. And so by going with line-wise, that put all of those things that we had separately from other vendors or other programs into one. And that also brought down the cost for it too.
So you're getting live notifications if there's a concern in the building somewhere?
Correct. So it will, they do most of it on an algorithm and based on what someone may or may not write or do under a monitored device, district monitored device. We might get an email, and that email includes district admin, or it can progress from there up to even Mr. Estrada. He was over there, I guess. Oh, there he is. Okay. But then also, if it is something of large concern, they will call, and there's a phone tree for that to make sure that we can intervene if possible.
One related to that, one last question. Is that, you said district monitor devices, that include all devices connected via Wi-Fi, even personal devices? Or it just means laptops?
So I would need to follow up with you on that. With the program that we used prior, I would say yes. If you were connected to district Wi-Fi, we may or may not have gotten a notification on what someone might have done based on, I guess, how it was assessed. But since this is relatively new, I can't speak to that right now, but I can definitely find out. I know for sure if you're using one of the student devices or staff devices, those things we do get a notification for.
And the 1,000+ tickets you've had so far this year, is that includes student devices, or is that staff and
student devices?
Okay.
So everything.
What's the percentage relative of student tickets? Oh, okay.
We can bring that back so that she can give adequate information.
I would say probably more student than staff, just because we have more students than staff, but I can find out for you that.
Well, when you come back with that, I would love to know how you prioritize those tickets. Like, what is is it whose device is it? Is it the kind of issue they're facing? What's the triage?
We usually everyone gets the same level of 911. Yeah, everyone's coming in. We're going to but depending on what the situation is, we may or may not triage it. Where we are kind of changing our practice on how we devices, especially. So if someone comes down with one that's broken, we can just check out a new one to them, so that there's less time with either a loaner device or them not having a device. And I think that's been a lot better this year. But of course, we're just doing what we can to make sure that students are not with, especially students and staff. We do have loaners for staff because the MacBooks are a little bit different.
Sure.
And they require a little bit different level of care. But with these student devices, just doing a swap and then having those repaired in-house, that's been nice too.
Thank you, Mary.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, and thank you for the thank you.
Another ticket.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. So we've got, where are we? The facilities audit by Dr. Michael Dietrich.
Hello, good evening. So this is very fitting. I just got back after a 2-day conference in Columbia, Missouri, with facility directors all over the state, and had an opportunity to share some of the things MRH was doing. They were very excited to hear about the committees that we have formed and a lot of the work we've done. So I do want to honor the fact that, Chris Holzer is here. He helps me with the committees. Dr. Colbert and Dr. Matz, both on the board committee. And I believe we have Ms. Goldsman here, and Enzo, who spoke earlier, our student rep. He is on our committee as well. But the thing that really stood out, and they actually had me stand up in front of a group of about 120 and talk about, yesterday as I talked about our MOT and how intentional we were about getting parents who were architects and teachers and students on the committee. And the way we've approached it has saved the district tens of thousands of dollars. Other districts go out, they hire firms, they do these huge studies, which we have a study that we're going to be putting out for RFP. But because we've already done so much of the legwork, it's really going to save us a considerable amount of money. So hats off just to both the committees and the work that they've done to help prepare this. So the objectives, to identify and categorize needs. Specifically, if you look at the other item that's attached in Assembly, we looked at safety. We divided things into 4, safety, site projects, building projects, and then design team. Address deferred maintenance and safety updates for a secure environment, and then to prepare a preliminary assessment for cost planning and an RFQ for an in-depth facility evaluation. So we'll jump in. Our facilities, we have what we call 4 campuses, the Early Childhood Center, elementary, middle school, high school, central office. This presentation does not include an evaluation of additional properties. So those additional properties that we currently have, we have 2 that we have recently declared as surplus, but the other 2 that we own are Joe's Place, and the other one is a house on Burgess, Laclede, that corner house by the Early Childhood Center. Looking at the totals of investments into those houses, Joe's Place, I believe we're a little over $3,000 as far as I'm only looking at the facility side, not looking at bills and utilities and things like that. So I'm looking at the facility side. There have been minimal investments into those properties that we've had to pay for. Joe's Place has a brand new roof, brand new gutters. All of that was paid for through an insurance. But there have been just minor upkeeps to both of those properties.
Who carries the insurance for Joe's?
We carry that, I don't want to speak, but I'm pretty sure we carry through, yeah. So if we're looking at safety, there were quite a few things that we looked at. I'm not going to go through every single one of these, but I'm going to go through some hot topic items. One of the things that we looked at that was in the budget for this year was adding roughly about 50 cameras across the district. When we started looking at it, we got bids. There was not enough money in the budget to make that happen, was the one reason why we held off. The second reason we held off is, as at MRH, we're learners. I was at a conference and I sat through a session on AI cameras and AI technology, and absolutely amazing what those cameras can do to help identify issues across a building. Example would be, a large crowd gathering in a hallway, potential fight. It would actually send alerts to our administrators and let them know. So just different things like that. Sound devices, unfortunately it's a world that we have to talk about this. They're tied to our cameras. If there was a gunshot, it can actually detect that immediately, proceed into a lockdown situation. So part of the reason why we've held off on that, one was budget. Two, we're becoming more and more aware of technology that's available to us, and it's something that we need to look at before we spend money and put a Band-Aid on something and then have to go back and fix it right. Probably the big one that everybody's going to look at, I didn't know he was behind me, is the weapon detection systems. And I've already seen one person kind of go, schools across St. Louis are doing this. When you're looking at this list, I want you to look at this as a menu. We are looking at anything and everything that we can potentially make available to our community. This is not because we don't think our school is safe. This is because we want to maintain a safe environment. So we are looking at the least invasive way of getting our kids into school safe. I've met with several students on this and said, hey, think about this. What do you think? It's much like if you've been to a St. Louis City game, if you've been to newer concerts, we're not frisking kids. The idea behind this is to keep weapons of mass killing out of our buildings. That's the goal. So students walk in. I've had an opportunity to watch a video of both Ladue and U City who are using these. They walk in, they hand the person their laptop, they walk through, they hand the laptop, and they just keep moving. So I know that is going to be a big community topic. But again, I want to look at this as this is a menu, and these are things that we have available to us. And it is not because I feel that this district is not safe. It is because we are forward thinking and we want to make sure that we continue to keep our students safe. So safety was the first area that we looked at. We moved on to site projects. I think we all know the track and field upgrade. There is an asterisk next to some of those. Those are ones that we identified as potential to generate revenue or assist in generating revenue to pay for those projects. Obviously, we probably get a couple inquiries a year about renting our track and field. Right now, we're not doing that. It's not in a condition where we can do that. Also, if we're renting it at night, it costs us too much money to run the current lighting system out there. It would not be a revenue producing. Also, one that came through our teachers was a request for EV charging stations. And there is an opportunity, specifically that I believe that came out of the Early Childhood Center, but those are available and we can actually set those up in an app at a minimal cost to our teachers. Building projects, these are our deferred maintenance. This is an area that has just really hurt us over the years, with the exception of number one. That is one thing I think I've shared before. Our district has done a really good job of keeping up on their roofs. Currently we have basically a roof at the ECC, this roof here, and some small spots at our high school campus. And when I'm talking to other districts, they have like this 20-year plan where they're just roof after roof after roof. If we follow years, we should be set for about the next 15. So roofs are one of the most expensive things that you're going to continue. Roofs and HVAC are two of the most expensive things you're going to do in schools. So that is one thing that has really helped us, is the roofs that we've had. And then HVAC, and then deep cleaning. There's a lot of areas just in our school that we can't reach as custodians. So, there are schools that, every 2 to 3 years they have a company come in and they clean the rafters in the gym. They get in the cafeteria, they clean the rafters. I don't think we've had that done since I've been here. So when you think about, that could directly impact attendance. We're talking about attendance tonight. Those dusty areas, making sure we're keeping those clean. And then tuck pointing. There's a small picture there. That's an exterior tuck pointing. of the ECC wall. Design team projects. These are things that we've discussed a little bit with principals. We've discussed with the learning team. What are things right now that we need to expand or build so that we can continue to grow with our learning? So we've talked about an elementary seat-to-table classroom, the ECC library. You know, if you think about the philosophy of MRH and we think about our spaces should be inspiring. Okay? Sorry, I think one of the least inspiring places, and I'm getting a smile from an ECC teacher, one of the least inspiring spaces to read in our district would be the ECC library. It's a clean space, it's a nice space, but it is not inspiring at all. And that should be something that kids want to go in, read, and it's a fun space to be in. Oops, sorry. We've talked about creating more division between middle school and high school on that 4th floor. We've talked about our secondary kitchen renovation. It needs a complete overhaul. And then ECC and elementary school kitchens, they're not in great shape, but they're really in a position where they just need a facelift, some equipment updates, bringing some things. Everything is in code, but there's some things that we definitely need to upgrade because in a few years it's going to be questionable. And then stairwell and concrete improvements for district-wide safety. And then we've also looked at just the ECC deck. Currently, our early childhood center, the gymnasium, is also the cafeteria. So we store our tables in the gym. And honestly, that is something that just really bothers me from a safety perspective. And it's something as I go to facility management meetings, they talk about this, you know, and the insurance claims of get those out of there. We have nowhere to go with them. So one of the things we've talked about is that seat-to-table room is there, bringing a small greenhouse off the seat-to-table room, having a storage area, and then a nice sitting area on the, I guess that's the west side of the deck. So dividing that deck up, because that deck really does not get used much, and actually making it purposeful, helping out the seat-to-table, helping out with storage, but then still maintaining a nice place to sit. So next steps, continue to work with Navigate. I should note, at this point, Navigate has been our only expense for this. Navigate typically in a issue where, you know, they're creating these documents, they're helping me go out and get any bids that I have not already been able to get myself. Typically, they would be in the ballpark between $20,000 and $30,000 at this point already, because we already used them on the high school project. They give us an extreme discount. We signed a contract, it was $4,500, which is a significant discount. And the amount of work that they have put in to help get this together has been significant. So they are in the process of pursuing an RFQ or a request for quote at this point. The goal would be that is all tied up and ready to come back to the board in early January. And it looks like I forgot a question slide. So can we just imagine there's a slide that says questions?
So you're saying the RFQ would come back in January or the plan?
So we have to go through it because of the cost potential.
Right.
We actually have to go through an RFQ,
Right.
which we can't just say, hey, this is who we're going to use for that. So it would be.
That's what will come back in
Yes.
January. But then when do you anticipate the plan? And will sorry, I'll stop with that.
Yeah,
That's the second
no,
part.
it's fine. So I would expect one of the 3 companies who I would expect to bid on it are involved in the process already, because, you know, and it's not limited just to those groups, but there are, you know, 3 groups that have been sitting on our committee. So I would imagine if they were one of the ones awarded, they've got a head start and they're just going to be able to roll. I wouldn't expect it to take very long.
Like
a month.
a month, okay.
And also knowing I'm going to be right there with them, just pushing and moving them.
And I would probably ask that Dr. Dietrich work with Navigate to bring a more firm time frame back, because I don't want.
Sure, no, that's fine.
Okay.
I'm just, okay, yeah. Well, I'm thinking with this in concert with the idea of like going for a bond and understanding really, you know, so will that facilities plan include sort of a prioritization of like immediate needs versus what could wait, and then also will it also include like how often we will have to replace a roof? So we know about what time we'd have to be doing that again, how often we'd be looking to replace furniture and things like that?
I don't think it'll get to that specificity. I think that'll come from me, of actually documenting. Like the goal would be to have a master sheet with dates and like this RTU was installed this year on this date and projected, you know, life of that is
and that's
this.
the list you guys are working on to that master list of assets?
That's going to be me.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So.
Okay.
But I did pull up. So the advertisement for the RFQ is set to start on 11/26. Questions are due to navigate on 12/6. Requests for qualifications estimated on 12/12. Interviews on 12/16. And then have somebody selected and ready for approval at the January board meeting would be the timeline.
Mike, sorry, real quick. Selected for approval for which particular project is it?
So it would be a complete facility audit. So being able to go
beyond the navigate.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So Navigate really was helping us with budget and helping get bids. They were not part of all of the inspections and walking through all the buildings. That was done by our MOT, which included the architects, the parents, the students.
Could I ask a question? I had a couple questions about the actual Navigate report. I noticed like weapons detectors. I don't know if it's just a typo, but it says
Typo.
Missing the
Missed
elementary.
elementary.
Okay.
Ed Rich pointed that out to me yesterday.
Okay.
Thank you, Ed.
And then when you have a line for owner design, construction contingency allowance, how is that different from professional services on each page?
Which-
so like 11, like the last line item in the contracts section is a owner design, construction contingency allowance cost, but then we also have C, which is professional services. So I was just curious what the distinction is between those two.
Yeah, so there's no cost for the professional services on any of those.
Well, they all have a subtotal. I think that's the cost.
Oh, okay.
I guess. There's no.
Is it possible that he gets that response back to you once he's able to collaborate with
Annie,
Navigate?
are you talking about the page 1, line 3?
No, I'm just like.
So just like assuming the bid is off a little bit, you know.
Yeah, the 10% is a contingency because we're gonna expect costs to go up.
Right,
from the
and you
time
have
they
that
bid.
construction contingency is built into the owner design allowance line, at least on the first page. On every page it is. So yeah, that's fine if you want to come back. I'm trying to understand, because I guess I would think professional services might be design or architect services or something like that, but it seems like it's in 11. So I was just trying to understand that.
Yeah, that could. So I can answer that. That could be the architects. That could be us keeping Navigate involved. That could be if there's a construction manager involved. There's a lot of different things that could be. So.
Dr. Dietrich, I also captured the questions that were posed, so when I hit save and submit, you'll have them in your email.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I'll make a comment here. So this document was reviewed by the 4R Resources Committee, and I think others too in that committee asked the Navigate representative because there's more here than we have money to spend. So what would they say was the priorities? And right away, he said, the deferred maintenance is where you should start. That's their recommendation, obviously. And he included track and field under deferred maintenance. But he said roofing, the parking lot at the MRH elementary, MRHE, for repair, and tuck pointing in all the buildings, and the track and field. Those were the top 4 items that he said we should pay attention to. And then there were community members in the meeting, and I think there was a sense of some of the community members, I certainly would agree with them, that safety, certainly we need to attend to a number of the safety items on the list, and that they might be right there with deferred maintenance in terms of priority. Perhaps some of the non-deferred maintenance, like I'll call it furniture, those might be further down the list.
That Dr. Dietrich is actually going to go back with the 4R Resources Committee to present his prioritized list, but I will say that furniture is a priority. And so as we continue to unpack that, particularly the furniture not necessarily meeting the needs of students, which has actually been presented by PAL board members. So I would ask that as Dr. Dietrich works through prioritizing the list, that he bring that list forward and have something for the board to react to.
Do we know when that is? We as a group have to balance what we can borrow against what we need and try to really come up with a good number. So do we know when we'll have that list?
That's actually on the timeline that was provided to the board, so that will be coming back soon.
One other thing is those EV charging stations, you may be able to get a grant. I think that's what we did at the
Through
city.
Ameren, yes.
Okay, cool.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Next, we've got the item number 5, the financial statements by Chris Holzer.
This is the summary for October. So our operating revenue as of the end of October, we're right around $4 million, 14% of the budget, and it's up from last year, $1.6 million. We did receive that net insurance recovery, a large portion of the CBE grant, MSD grant, the pilots related to a closed TIF on the Maplewood side, and some salary reimbursement from salaries and benefits and our people. So through October, all dollars in that category. Purchase services are $938,000, and those are a little bit higher than the prior year at 22.5%, compared to 24% this year. Supplies are $630,000. Last year they were about $680. We're 29%, so relatively similar there on a percentage basis. Our capital outlay, $248,000, is 65% higher than the prior year. At 20%, long and short-term debt, we're right around $57,000, or 20% of the budget, and that is the interest payment for our lease purchase funds that we borrowed last year. Overall, our operating expenses to date through October 31st, are $7.3 million. Right now, we're right around that 34% operating fund balance as a percentage of expenditures. That will change when we bring future budget amendments as we move through the fiscal year. We're starting to get a little bit clearer picture of state revenue. We'll probably give that another month before we start making adjustments, but I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves there. What questions do you have?
Chris, can you respond to the question? I know that there was a question asked by Jenny at the previous board meeting.
So last month, Jenny, you had asked what was inside of the 5198 miscellaneous local revenue. So in 24, that was large because the Grow Your Own grant, and we received a pretty large ITEF grant. Chris, remind me what ITEF stands for.
Innovative Technology Education Fund.
Okay, so we've gotten that quite a few times, and that was just under 60,000, if I'm remembering right. And then in this year, miscellaneous local revenue is one of those catch-alls for anything that doesn't fit into one of the above categories, so we can't really predict how that's going to land. So this year, I think we've got around 30,000 budgeted in there. We put things like P-card rebate, and there's another ITEF grant that's already been recorded there, a small one.
So now, I will say, actually, this month, I think it says 156, because that was the number, it was like 30, 156 collected, then it said 30 budgeted, 3,200 collected. Now it says 156 budgeted
Yes.
3,200
So we applied
collected.
the budget amendment.
Okay, and now so it's not, say, 30 now, it says, okay, so now it's 156 that we're thinking we'll get from those various, okay. Cool, thank you. In line 5631, on the revenue page 3, it says, last month it said we received $945,673 from the insurance, but now it says that's the budget amount, and we only collected $933,002.
Again, I don't feel comfortable getting into all those numbers.
Okay. So
I'm
I
happy
get.
to come back with that answer.
Yeah, if you could follow up, because I think I had some questions from a couple months ago too that I was waiting for a follow-up on too. All right, and then expenses by function page. I was looking at the student activities line, the 1411, and I noticed it was a lot. It was like cut in half from last year to this year, and I can't remember if that was a conversation we had, but I was curious what we cut. Is student activities also like extracurriculars that aren't sports? Because there's a sports activities.
Well, in 24, you're looking at revenue. So in
Oh, this is our rev. No, I'm on the expenses page. So I'm on page 6 now. So it says 1411 student activities. We budgeted this year 108,858. Last year it was 216,663. And so I couldn't remember discussing a large cut, so I just didn't know.
It's not necessarily a cut, but you'll forgive me if there's probably about 100 student activities accounts, so I'll need to go through and look to see.
Okay,
how
so
things
the
move
student
around.
activities is everything that's not in athletic. Because there's student athletics is the next line. So student activities like Stuco, all those things? Okay.
But it could also be a grant that's.
Oh,
directed at students.
really?
It could be a donation, it could be.
Student activities can be all those things.
It could be a
Okay.
lot of different things, yes.
Okay, I did not know that. All right, and then, but I did notice, it was weird when I was just looking into that, and for fiscal year 2024, in August it had that amount as 216,663 as the actual amount, but then the next month it said 146,254, and then it's back to 216,63. So it was weird. I don't know why it would have changed in between. Is it just like?
Would you mind?
Yeah, you want me to send you that?
Typing that question.
Yeah, I will, because it was just weird. I don't know why an actual from last year would change. Okay, sure, I'll send you that. Let's see. I think I have one. Oh, I had a question about the fund balance report, and this is just for my own clarification. Is the fund balance report, so when we do a financial statement, I assume it covers like the first day of the month to the last day of the month, and then when we do the next month, it's covering the first day of that month to the last day? Okay, so I was just confused why the ending year-to-date balance from a fund from the prior month is not the beginning year-to-date balance for that fund. So like, for example, I'll take the bond issue fund because that was a huge one. Last month, it had the ending balance at like 10 million something. And now it has it at, a deficit of 28,900. Then it started with 616,000.
So I'm just going to ask if we can maybe have those questions emailed so that Chris is able to actually.
I think that's one though I would expect we could answer because it went from 10 million to 616,000. So that's my question is like if
I will need to look at both months' statements and look at all the activities. So again.
So we can't. Okay.
All right.
Well,
Any other questions? Nope. All right. Thanks.
I know, but it's just frustrating because
all right, moving on.
My questions can never be answered.
So hold on. I think.
Well,
is it is it unreasonable to ask for that level of detail to be sent in advance as a question? I mean, if you want an actual answer, right? I mean,
I guess I would expect that someone in this room could explain to me why a fund went from $10 million to 616,000. I don't feel like that's something I should ask in advance. I've also asked and still not gotten the answer. We had a budget amendment, and it asked for an increase of $90,000 in purchase services, and no one in this room could tell me what it was for. So I don't think those are unreasonable things to be able to answer on the spot. Now, I have always said when it's a detailed question, I will wait, I will get an answer after, but I don't get an answer. So
I mean, regardless, we don't have the answer now, so.
I understand.
Right, so there's really no reason to
well, so I'm not allowed to express my thoughts?
I mean, this really isn't the place for it. But
Where is the place then?
I think it is perfectly legitimate for you to have questions. And I would ask that, I think it's a better use of our time if our staff can respond to you, you know, with accurate information.
Right.
This is complicated, obviously, and school board finance is complicated, and we want to give an accurate answer. I think you've also expressed, Jenny, that you want questions asked in public answered in public, and I think that's what the team has tried to do.
And my point is that I do feel like some of these should be able to be answered in public without having to be asked first. So I've spent the time to review this and look through the materials and try to understand it. I go back, I look at the past, I look at the materials available. And so again, when it's been a very detailed thing, okay, I have been in this situation. I've looked at government finance for several years, and typically most of the questions could be answered. I am happy when they're very detailed to send in advance, but I do expect that someone in this room could tell me why that fund amount was $10 million last month, and now it's 616. So I don't think that's an unreasonable question to ask in public. So I am finished for now, and we'll send is that a problem, Josh?
it's not a problem. I'm just saying that, I mean, there's no reason to like beat a dead horse. It's like, we get it. We don't know the answer. We'll get you the answer. I mean, that's it. I don't understand why we need to
ask questions in public.
Well, I mean, you're asking a question, but we've already told you the answer. We don't know.
Right.
And
I stopped, and then Katie started speaking, so I was answering her.
Okay, great. All right. Moving on. Let's see, where are we? The next thing we've got is the budget directive.
Okay, over the past month, Dr. James and I have been working through the budget directive. This is a draft of that. There's quite a bit of text on here, so I won't read this all to you. By now, I'm hoping you had a chance to review this and if you have any questions, either Dr. James or I will happily answer them to the best of our ability.
Can I ask a basic question? Is this supposed to be the board's directive to the district? Is that what this document is? What exactly is it?
So in the past, and in my fourth year, the administration creates the budget directive, gives it to the board. Feedback is provided. We make adjustments based on that. So we look at district-wide foci. I also incorporate items that are included in the goals that have been developed by the board for me. Okay. And then we look at forecasting from a revenue standpoint to determine where our fund balance could feasibly end. And so we provide that information. The board gives us feedback. We make those changes and bring it back in the month of December. This item was actually requested to come earlier. Mm-hmm. And so we are ensuring that the board has adequate time to review, provide feedback for adjustments.
Could you update the perpetual calendar to include this? I didn't see that, so thank you for the notice that we're reviewing it tonight and hopefully voting on it next month.
Well, I'd like to offer some comments then as far as revising it. So is that at the time for this now? Okay. Can we add here an increase in the maintenance budget? Currently spend, we budget $200,000 a year, and as we saw the list from Mr. Dietrich here a little bit ago from Navigate, $200,000 a year is woefully The other thing I would like, two other items. One on budget directive, item number, which one is about staff salary? Oh yeah, number 5. It mentions prioritize competitive salary increases for staff to retain and attract high quality educators and support staff. I think I would just like to maybe prioritize within that the certificated staff, if we could give some consideration to what might be the difference between attending to their needs and what will come up in the collective bargaining agreement. And then the last item I'd like to mention is the maintain a fund balance of 30%. I believe last year we were at, was it 36%? Is that right? Is that right? Right around there, yeah. Yeah, right around there. So I would like not to drop from 36% to 30%. So I'd like to some consideration given to maintaining at least 36%, if not returning to a number a bit higher like we had in previous years.
Based on the forecasting that we've done, it is impossible to bring a board directive with a 36% without cutting a large part of the programming and or people in order to maintain a 36% fund balance, in addition to prioritizing salaries for all groups in MRH, because we recognize that our support staff actually contribute greatly to the programming of our district. So
What would be the rationale for having a 36% fund balance? I mean, that would basically be a different way of saying no deficit spending, right? Which is, your preference.
Yes, I'd like the district to explore, at least with respect to the budget directive. I know it's not the final budget. What would it take to live within the means that we've been provided by our voters? And they give us about $23 million a year and several more from state and federal sources and county sources. What would it take to live within those means more closely?
So we did provide that to the board, what it would mean to actually live in those means, which would mean cutting metaphors at a large amount, decreasing the number of teachers that we have at each grade level, which would increase class sizes. So we brought those items forward in regards to what we would need to cut in order to have a no deficit spend. And based on the feedback from community at the board community roundtable, the community is not interested in minimizing the things that make us who we are. So that also includes cutting seed to table. That would include cutting SEL teachers. So there's a way to get there, but to what expense? And I will say, even though our MSIP data is embargoed, the things that we have in place are working, and you will see that once that data is released on the 25th. Our teachers work extremely hard. They stay in MRH and are committed to MRH because of the programming that we offer. I just don't think it's a feasible request to have a 36% fund balance. Also considering the increases that we need to make, not only for teachers, but support staff.
Yeah, to that point, I'm also uncomfortable with the suggestion that we would be prioritizing certificated staff over other staff. Can you say more about why you would be creating different classes of staff?
Well, one of the issues is going to be the collective bargaining agreement that we're not going to be able, we're going to be negotiating with one group, a very large group, with one decision, and at other staff might be able to be on more of a position by position basis. So we need to.
I don't think we should really be talking.
No,
about
I know that. Well, that's what she was asking. Why would I prioritize that? So I'm saying because that's going to be one big chunk. It's going to be the biggest chunk of the budget that's going to be affected. So I just say, can we, in looking at all that, could we prioritize that number first before we move on to other positions?
All right.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't think that we wouldn't look at that. I'm very uncomfortable with proposing salary inequities and raises or increases across the district. I think we've seen that play out historically.
I would hope we're able to give raises, to all staff and all employees. But this as a budget directive, this isn't the final budget, right?
Yeah.
I would like to give priority to understanding what the impact will be, making sure we attend first to the certificated staff.
Is this
That's
something
my
that-
view. I understand there's a whole board here.
Is
but
this
I'm-
something that we need a motion for
Well-
to change the budget?
No, this is just a first reading.
No, what I'm saying is if you said that you wanted to have something like
Yeah, I
included-
don't want that included, so I mean, we need to vote on, are we gonna adjust this then?
That's what I'm saying.
No, this is just a first reading. We're giving feedback.
Yeah, but
Yeah, but
you're proposing that they come back next month with this adjusted to say maintain a 36% fund balance, and I don't,
I think that this document needs a great deal of revision. It is the board's communication to the administration about what are the funding priorities for the district.
so how do you propose we do a great amount of revision?
I think that I think that's under discussion, and I think that the way that we should probably start with is to survey our directors and ask them what sort of provisions they would like in this budget directive. I am in agreement with Brian that it should say something along the lines of certified staff or those staff covered under the union contract. In number 5, I also agree that we need more budget to deal with maintenance issues on an ongoing basis, and we can rely on bond levies for things like their major needs over a number of years. Deferred maintenance that we try to deal with in bulk. But we cannot be operating a district where we only have $200,000 to do maintenance on $250 million or so worth of infrastructure. There's a lot of needs here. I think that where we need to start is by surveying the directors.
Okay, well, I guess my question then is, if this document needs to be edited, that would require the consensus of all of us to do. So that's what I'm saying is like, is there a motion to edit it? Because if not,
Well, I think
This is
it's
just
too difficult
this
to
is-
do this in this type of setting, because I think we all have very different opinions. I think the point would be is if we had an opportunity to all send to each other our thoughts, and we could read what everyone thought, and then come back as a group and say,
I mean, that's fine too. I mean,
You know,
I guess what I'm
think-
saying,
yeah.
is.
yeah, because we do have to have consensus about what goes
Ultimately, we
in.
need a budget directive that will pass.
Yeah, that will pass, exactly. So this is just a first reading, Josh. So parliamentary rules, we're just giving feedback. The document's going to come back to us. The district can take our feedback and use it, not use it.
No,
and let's see what comes back.
But I guess I would like to ask for a vote and have some recommendations placed on, because it's very difficult to bring back items and not have any feedback in regards to the change. So if one of the recommendations is to have a 36% fund balance, my ask would be, may I have a vote? Because it's difficult to actually come back, bring the information, and the board asked for a timeline for these items to come back, which are aligned to my personal goals as superintendent. So I am asking during this meeting, if there are changes that are being recommended, can recommendations be made and that a vote be made so that I know my direction?
What I'm proposing is that we don't vote on anything tonight. We don't change anything tonight. We all have an opportunity to, I think we're all tired. It's a long night. I have a lot of thoughts about it, but honestly, there was a lot of stuff to prepare for, so I didn't really get to put them on paper. So it might be helpful if we each have thoughts, we share them with each other, we come back next month and we talk about them then, and then we vote on what that document would look like.
So the budgeting process starts, so in the new budgeting timeline, Chris will be sending this information out, and we're already looking at department goals and other areas where we might reduce. And so as we plan through, I don't think that this item is going to go through if we are bringing it back and bringing suggestions back in December. If the information and we can't get consensus, that means it's going into January and February. So I'm just asking that administration has enough time to either bring those items back, and so if there are recommendations by the full board or members of the board around whether it's the fund balance or to add maintenance, typically maintenance is not added in a board directive. That comes out in the budgeting process. So if there are certain items, it would be helpful for me that the collective board have a vote or make recommendations in regards to what the changes can be so that I can capture those and bring those back.
Would it be helpful, I mean, maybe we just have a special meeting? How much time do you need? Like if we, you know, are given a week or whatever to write down our thoughts, and then we come back and we have a, special session to make the vote, then,
Our next work session, but that's pretty full, so.
well, why don't we I mean, that's what I'm saying, we'll just have another, I mean, we could put it on a date or whatever. I think that's kind of the best compromise, is to not do anything tonight, to give people an opportunity to make their changes, and then we know what we're voting on. And then that way we can also give them enough time to
Have it for the next meeting.
exact.
I mean,
No?
I'm.
All right,
I'm in
okay.
favor of that.
All right, so that's what we're doing. Okay, so.
Can I call for a vote for that, though? I mean, if we're talking about board consensus, I am asking for a vote.
Okay, sure. All right, so I move to, what?
Do we need to wait?
I don't know. All right, let's add it to an action item.
Yeah.
Wherever that is on our sheet. Okay, so that'll be number 5.1. All right, where were we? Work communications, calendar of events. I would like to say that I know that there was a concert that happened, I believe, last night from there, but it seemed like they did a good job, so I'd like to give a shout out to the choir. I don't know if anything else is going on.
Yeah, I was there. Can I say something about it?
Sure.
Yeah, I thought it was absolutely excellent. Miss Maddox clearly, those students will do anything for her. She was amazing. She led them well. They responded very well to her. It was an excellent concert. You have a good time? I had a great time, yes. All of the choirs. And I wanted to make one comment. I think this choir concert demonstrated, just yet again, the success of the school as apprentice model at the high school, where 2 of the high school seniors helped direct 2 of the choirs. And so we saw really, I mean, just anyway, Grace Floyd and Alejandro Campbell Gomez were the 2 student conductors. And they, excellent. So I just want to shout out to not only a great teacher, great program, but also modeling or helping apprentice students, at least one of whom indicated has an interest in becoming a future music teacher. So we're providing a space for their own personal development. I thought it was just excellent all around.
Cool.
As the high school liaison, I'd like to point out that Capstone Night is on December 17th, and there is still a need for community members to participate in reviewing the presentations from our high school students. So plug for that, and certainly board members are welcome to serve as capstone judges.
There's an email that went out, I believe, from Mr. Sosa.
We're shouting out. Can I give a shout out to speech and debate, because they are cleaning house, novice and varsity. So those kids are doing really well. I don't know about the lower grades, so if anyone has any shout outs for the lower grades, please share them.
Let's see, we've got a bunch of committee meetings coming up. Looks like, let me forward here. A lot of it's actually next month, but in December we're going to have a bunch of committee meetings. I don't know if we go that far ahead. If we don't need to, great. All right, there you go. Calendar of events. Let's see, the perpetual calendar. I don't think we need to have anything except for what we already talked about. we have a committee member replacement, but is that under
Yep.
action items, or is that something we
Under
do now?
committee reports.
That's, we still have to
Pal
Pal
board first.
Or Maya's over here waiting for us.
All right, never mind. All right, so, yes, so now we've got, the PAL board report. So go ahead.
Amazing. What's up, guys? My name is Maya. If you guys aren't aware, I'm a senior at the high school, and I'm the president of PAL Board, or the Principal Advisory Leadership Board, for anyone who's unaware. I just realized can't connect to these. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I'm going to wait till it gets up there to continue. Okay, now you can see my name written. Amazing. You can go ahead and move to the first slide. Okay, perfect. So for this month, we sort of work in little sections on what we're focusing on. So we sort of have a directive as a group. So this month, as well as next month, as a board, we're working on focusing on curriculum and metaphors and making sure that the way we interact with those two concepts are safe and inspirational for students of all ages. We also have a little outline here featuring what we will come to see in the future meetings of what we're covering, just a little FYI for the future. One thing I will note, this is unique in that we will be taking 2 months to cover this topics, just because we've had so much interesting and engaging conversations surrounding those curriculum requirements that we will also be presenting on similar topics next month, but coming to you with new information about that. So, one thing we do as PAL Board, I'm sure several of you are aware of this, but we're meeting with students of all grades. So we're talking to ECC kids, elementary. We also recently made a new focus group of underclassmen who are engaged in the school to meet with as well. So far, this will come a little bit later as well, but we met with some underclassmen, and here, just so you guys are aware sort of what those conversations look like, this is an outline of the questions that we sort of ask these students to try to have some of these productive conversations. Of course, this led into separate conversations. It wasn't a strict Q&A, but just so you guys have sort of a general idea of what's occurring in these conversations about curriculum. Okay, so this is sort of where we're at right now, the conversations that we've had. I mentioned us meeting with underclassmen just a second ago, so that is one thing we did. I want to highlight 2 things that were sort of brought up a lot in those conversations. The first one we have is reciprocal engagement. So this just sort of means that in the classes where students reported feeling the most interested, invested in their studies, was when the teachers seemed as though they were interested in learning just as much. And sort of felt like that was one of the best ways to help the students feel engaged, is the teacher being actively engaged in that process with them. And another thing, this isn't like an ask we have formally yet, this is just a conversation that we've had, was interest in more technical courses being offered separately from South Tech, so looking at stuff like home ec and shop class that a lot of other high schools around the area provide, looking into something in that sort of zone. Another thing that we're doing as a group, we formulated a Google form to send out to all of high school. I wrote here upperclassmen because of that meeting we had with underclassmen, but actually it's all of high school. This form is more so focused on our metaphor as a school and sort of how we're being deliberate with that delivery of that metaphor to our high schoolers specifically, because we've had some conversations as a group that when we're looking at the whole districts, right, these metaphors are very apparent in the younger grades, right? As studio, you have to have something to present to your parents. That's a requirement. Same with, at the middle school, like you go on the expeditions, but when we're looking at a high school level, it's more something that you opt in or opt out of. So sort of analyzing how we as a high school interact with that metaphor. And another thing mentioned briefly is course content. So the possibility of maybe adding new classes, of course, there's more to discover there before we get back to you on that. And also increasing and maintaining interaction with metaphors that came up briefly earlier in this meeting. Just so far, we found it very important to maintain those metaphors in all grade levels, because all students find them really engaging and are a way that we're sort of differentiating ourselves from other schools in the St. Louis area, and honestly just making a more enjoyable experience for all of our students. Okay, So here are our next steps we have, specifically looking into next meeting, where we hope to come with an ask prepared for you guys. But also, we have not yet met with the ECC in elementary, which is why most of what I covered was specific to the high school, is because we still have to meet with them before the next meeting. We're working on planning those and also having sort of a perpetual schedule, meeting with those schools, looking in the future to avoid any confusion with this again. And also additional discussion about metaphors. So that is all I have. Does anyone have any questions?
I don't believe so. Thanks so much for your report. You know, I don't know if, well, I don't think I was here last time, but you know, if you got homework or something to do, you can jump.
Okay, I'll consider that.
I'm just saying, like, you know.
I do in fact have a test tomorrow.
Yeah, so, I mean, whatever. I just want to be, it's getting kind of late, and I just want to be cognizant of your time.
I have a question. Oh, Maya, before you go,
Oh,
sorry.
Brian,
What's the current status on discussions about that space in the high school where you were hoping for new furniture design or utilization of that space out by those windows you were talking about last
Yeah,
meeting?
I know what you're talking about, but I don't know if there's like.
Has there been any movement on that? Or
any movement? Honestly, at this point, I proposed the idea to the board as something that we're looking for, and I'm waiting for further movements from other board members to see any action on that actually occur, because can't do
I didn't know if
anything.
anything has been set up in there, at least on a, with.
Well, we don't have any budget for it. Right, we
No,
would
but
need.
the furniture from spaces that aren't being currently utilized. that
We
maybe
we
something
have
has been
had
moved in there.
we have had conversations about that for sure. That's not something that's occurred yet, but we might see that happen. It might move to a more student council like group because as PAL we're just sort of looking at communication with the board, but we have discussed that with some of the other groups I'm involved in for sure.
Okay, thank you very much.
Great. Okay. Moving on.
I have a committee report from MSBA. I'm not sure if we're not using the Google reporting form, but I did. My report is attached. Wanted to particularly point out as the delegate that there were 3 changes made to the MSBA advocacy platform for this year. There was specific discussion among the delegates on all 3 of these amendments to the advocacy platform. Specifically, we approved the wording as it is in section 1 about finance and support for non-public school funding, that we oppose that across all categories. There was a proposal to add for section on school, community, and family relations around child nutrition programs, that advocacy be increased around providing free school breakfast and lunch to all students. There was some loud opposition, but it was a very small bit of opposition. So that was approved as a new advocacy platform, or in addition to the advocacy platform. And then the third, I think is interesting, the MSBA has added an advocacy position around cell phones, and again, continuation of MSBA's commitment to local control and supporting that school districts have the authority to adopt policies to restrict cell phone usage. That was the bulk of the delegate assembly, and I attended several sessions. I've just included some high-level learnings in there. Did want to remind all school board members that we are required by the state to participate in training, whether we are returning board members or new board members. Jenny, thank you for having completed all of your new board member training. Gentlemen, please work on completing yours, and wanted to just share that I appreciated being our representative at MSBA.
Do you know if there was a general consensus, and I don't know how people feel about this cell phone thing? Like, I'm for it, just getting rid of them, but or at least having them sequestered?
So
you know?
there's no position from MSBA on whether cell phones should or shouldn't be allowed in schools, just that school boards should have the ability to set policy, and that was, I think, elevated to the level of a advocacy platform item because of some issues in Columbia Public Schools this past year, and I think a concern that there may be efforts by the legislature to preempt, school board authority to be able to make those decisions for what makes sense for our own school.
Gotcha. Okay.
Trent, do you want me to give an update on Joe's Place? Our meetings are the night before our board meetings, so it's difficult to get the form filled out in time, but,
Go ahead if you want to do it.
No, I'll let you. You go ahead. I did the last
I think we were going to have 2 new students in Joe's Place, but that fell through, but we now have another interested one in there. The finances are in very good shape, in such good a shape that we are not applying for a couple of grants because we feel like those funds should go to somebody else who doesn't need the money, who needs the money. I also have a report on our resources. Brian and I attended. We had about, what do we have, 4, 6, 7 people, I think, at our meeting. We had a presentation from Corey Ladinsky on this Navigate report. We got to ask some questions about what's behind some of these large numbers. So we have a little better breakdown. We had a discussion about what were the sort of priorities in the group. We listed, as Brian said earlier, safety and deferred maintenance. And we asked Corey for a recommendation. He said if he was going to really work on something, it would be deferred maintenance. And then we had some discussion about purchase services and how we might address sort of reviewing all of those different purchase services in the budget.
I just wanted to add for Joe's Place, they're also in the process of updating the bylaws to make them, they haven't been looked at in a while, so that's good. And then the fundraiser, which was set for December 7th, there was timing issues, so that is actually going to be moved to February 8th, right around Valentine's Day. So just put that on your calendars now and be on the lookout for more information. They're going to send a note out to everyone about the date. And then Christy and I had a chance to attend the ECC, that's our school, and I will tell you, we got to go to the morning meeting that is once a month. It's once a month, right? It is a joy. So if you've never done that, it is a very uplifting experience because they celebrate all the children. Each class is recognized for something, and the kids get so excited. So that was a really great experience.
Our students met. We have a very active group of community members. Thank you, Ms. Timberlake. Thank you, Ms. Woodruff. And thank you to our student representatives as well. Looking forward to integrating our new community member into the work, but we are continuing to provide some input into the portrait of a graduate and in alignment with what our PAL board is offering, also talked about metaphors and how those show up across the...
Okay, let's see, where are we? There was a committee application for placement in, let me see if I can get to the... Yeah, for our community. All right. I mean, I guess we just say, okay, great.
Whose committee is that? Is that yours? Do you, how many, I mean, you don't have a ton of community members, do you?
All right, perfect.
Yeah,
All right, great.
there you go.
So do we need to vote on that or just say that's where? All right, that's where she goes. Very exciting. Okay. School board election update. To do this, it's super exciting. Then There's a description on what you need to do. Yeah, you gotta basically fill out some stuff and.
Filing begins on Tuesday, December 10th at
Right.
8 a.m. I think it's up at the St. Louis County Board of Elections is North.
Yeah, and you have to go
You have to go there in person and fill it out
Right.
on Tuesday, December 31st.
Right, and then there's some other paperwork you have to fill out regarding like financial statements or, for the athletics and stuff like that. It's super simple to get on the ballot, if you want to do that. So there you go. Let's see, where are we next? Strategic Plan Advisory Committee, roles and responsibilities. What is this?
It's just there as a standing item.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, we're not. All right, so now we're going to move on to action items. I guess we're going to add to whether or not we're going to, one, amend, or whether or not we're going to add comments to the budget directive. And then if we are going to add comments in the budget directive, how we do it. So going to amend the budget directive, or are we going to
amend the agenda.
Okay,
to
right.
Thank you.
All right, all in favor? Aye. All right, any opposed? No. Okay. All right, so that's going to come later. So anyway, so number one.
I move to approve board policies BDC, DF1-2, GBE, BC, JEC1, JECA2, and KH as presented by MSBA in the 2024B policy badge.
I'd like to amend the motion to include the other board policies, 1, IGB, IGD, and IGDF, as a consent agenda for all the board policies.
Were those ones we looked at last time, too?
There's a 2, 3, 4, and 5.
If we can do the batch on the first one, we can do the batch on all of them. Or first two.
All right, so guys, second on the motion.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? I'm gonna say no because I haven't reviewed them.
No, they're all, he's just consolidating items, and I'm wondering if we can't do that, if they're listed like that, because we have to do them separately.
I mean,
So why don't we just,
right, this is,
You made the first. Do you want to take the friendly amendment?
All right, I withdraw my amendment.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
yeah, we're just on one, we're not changing.
All right, so number one, we have a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No? All right, great.
I move to approve board policy JO-1 as modified.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, great.
I move to approve board policy IGB as modified.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move to approve board policy IGDF as presented by MSBA.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move to approve the fiscal year 24 audited financial statements as presented.
All in favor?
Aye.
And finally, I move to adjourn the meeting.
We got one more.
Sorry, I was going with that. Yeah, with this. Was that Brian?
Brian.
Sorry.
All right. Okay. So, all right, so,
I don't think we voted.
well, we have to,
Audit report we did.
okay, the audit report, everybody's in favor of. The next one is, I don't know.
Oh, you're right. All right, you do.
So, do we, someone want to make a motion?
I move to propose that we individually review the budget directive and set a time for a work session meeting to discuss the changes we would like as a group. Is that accurate?
Yes, second.
All opposed?
Aye.
All in favor? Show of hands. Opposed? All right. Ayes have it. Motion passes. So now I need to know,
We can adjourn and set the date.
all right, sounds good. All right, so can I get a motion?
I move to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. All right, great.
Trent, were you the second on that?